It's good to see some familiar faces out here tonight. I appreciate you guys coming in here, staying in here at least with me, although I have no doubts that Jackie is also talking about some wonderful things with regards to admissions, and will be very helpful for those parents that are on that part of their parenting journey. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ashley Quamme, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I have my own practice here in the Evans area where I specialize in couples, but also in parenting as well. And I love keeping at least a couple of teenagers on my caseload because they keep me young and they keep me cool and in the know with all the things that are going on in the teenage world. I do have my timer on because I can be a little bit long-winded, so I apologize if I'm messing around with that. But I don't want to keep you here any longer than what you guys want to be here for. Just a couple of quick notes. When I am talking about families, I like to always make it known that I am talking about usually two-parent households. So if there are any single parents or blended families out there, just know that I love and also include you too, but from just a ease of conversation and giving examples and stuff, I'm generally talking about a mom and dad. So if that excludes you in any way, I apologize. It is not meant to exclude you. The topic of teenage mental health is so broad and so big that when Aaron asked me to come and talk, my impulse was to say yes, of course. And then it was kind of a, oh gosh, like that's such a big topic. Like, what would these parents want to know? What would I want to know if I were a parent sitting there? And so before I kind of jump into things, I'd like to just kind of take a quick poll so that I can frame at least some of what I'm talking about to what you guys need. How many of you out there have middle schoolers? Okay, quite a bit. Okay, and then high schoolers? Okay, also quite a bit. Okay, so about half and half. Maybe some of you have both a middle school and a high schooler then. Well, these are some of the most challenging years when it comes to a parenting standpoint. And for those of you that are already knee deep into it or have on your way kind of out of it, maybe you already know, but unlike those toddler years when they are physically very demanding, our teenage years becomes very mentally and emotionally demanding of us as parents. And if you don't know that yet, you will very soon find out that those demands are coming. Yes. You know, from a clinical standpoint, what I find to be most common and general too out there is, you know, depression and anxiety and even ADHD. And for tonight, I'm going to stick to mostly just depression and anxiety because that is mostly what I see and work with for teenagers and in parents too. So I recognize that I'm leaving out a plethora of other mental health diagnoses. And so if you have specific questions out there about other diagnoses, please know I'm not an expert in everything just because I'm a therapist, but I'd be happy to talk to you after, or I can give you my email address and happy to have a conversation that way too. But for tonight, I'll stick to mostly just depression and anxiety. If you guys have questions as I'm going through and talking, please write them down. I'm also going to save a few minutes kind of here at the end to answer any questions that you may have. And I'm also happy to stay after for a few minutes, although probably not more than about 10 or 15 because my kids will be calling asking where I am. Daddy's in charge tonight, so if I'm too late, they'll start calling me. But when it comes to teenage depression and teenage anxiety, what we find is that about 10% of our teenage population or children population, and when we say children, we mean ages 3 to 17, about 10% of those are diagnosed with one or the other. There is a large percentage of our teens that if they are diagnosed with one, meaning if they have an anxiety diagnosis or a depression diagnosis, about 3 out of 4 of those kids have the other. So there's a pretty high comorbidity rate with anxiety and depression. It's very common to see both, and they can look very differently in our kids. They can also look very differently in boys and in girls too, and I'll talk a little bit about just some of those differences, at least here. For many teens, preteens as well, and maybe you guys are already finding this, their moods fluctuate quite a bit. Yeah. How many of you have already seen that in your kids, especially? Yes. All right, good. I'm glad. And that's because their brains, this is such a big developmental period for their brains. Darren Shire, who, well, I don't know where Darren went. Okay. That would make sense. Darren is also a fantastic resource for those of you that don't know him at the PIA. He does a lot with brain studies, and I value his work. But our teenagers' brains, our preteens' brains, they're growing astronomically during this period, and it's not uncommon for then that to look like kind of a big tornado emotionally. And you guys have probably seen that. You throw into the mix puberty, and it can be kind of a nightmare, not only for them, but for us as parents trying to navigate that as well. And for the most part, this is pretty normal. This is a normal part of being a teenager. This is a normal part of growing. And so what I don't want to do tonight is I don't want to give you the impression that just because you're a teenager may be a little bit anxious, maybe a little bit moody, maybe struggling, maybe your teenage girl struggles during that time of the month. I don't want to leave you with the impression that they're depressed or that they're anxious, because this is such a normal part of our human experience. We all experience anxiety. We all experience low moments, maybe even some bouts of what we call and what might look like depression. But for our teens, this is very, very normal part of their own development. There are those teenagers, though, that struggle beyond just that quote-unquote normal part. And for those teens, it can be a real difficulty. Even just getting through the day sometimes can be difficult. I have a lot of parents that come in and they'll say, I've noticed some changes since my kids started 7th grade or since 6th grade. And usually we start to see those changes coming about in those middle school years, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. These are hard years. I'm so thankful that I went through middle school when I did, because I could not imagine going through middle school, and I say specifically middle school, but middle school right now, with technology being what it is, the pressure to be on all the time, on your device, right, in the know, to be cool, to look a certain way. It's a lot of pressure on our kids. And they may not be able to articulate it verbally to us, but it is important for us as parents to know how much pressure that they do experience when they walk in the halls at school. And sometimes the pressure can get the best of them, and sometimes maybe it comes out as being very anxious, or maybe it comes out as struggling and experiencing some bouts of depression. Depression in our younger, kind of more middle school age kids can start to look like a lot of things. It can, and even for our high schoolers too, but it can start to maybe look like a change in their friend group. Maybe in elementary school they were friends with certain folks, and then come middle school, they have entirely different set of friends, and maybe this set of friends you're kind of questioning some of the choices, the behaviors. Maybe if you allow your child to have a phone or a device, maybe you're reading through messages and you're like, I don't know about some of the things these kids are saying. It can look like changes like that. They can start to be withdrawn from family, friends, not wanting to do or engage in certain things. They can also make self-deprecating statements. And this is true for not only our girls, but also now for our boys too. Those statements of not looking a certain way. Girls start to notice their bodies during this time. And that might be weird for maybe some of you dads to kind of hear, but girls are aware of their bodies. They're aware of what they're looking like in comparison to other middle school girls out there. And, for a vast majority of them, unfortunately, they start to develop senses about themselves where they don't maybe really like certain parts of their body, and that can start to come out maybe in statements that they make about themselves. So these are just maybe some clues to kind of pick up on, right, in conjunction with other things, right? Depression in our younger kids can also look like anger, maybe a lot of bouts of anger. They just get very irritable and are really angry. And this is true not just for depression, but also for anxiety too. There's a lot of research that shows, and this is more in adult women, but adult women who are very angry tend to also have a clinical anxiety diagnosis as well. So anger can be that mask for something that's a lot deeper. So if you're noticing changes from an anger standpoint, there might be something a little bit more underneath the water that's going on. When it comes to kind of on the more extreme level, our teens, middle schoolers and high schoolers can start to experience panic attacks. It's not uncommon for them in middle school with all the testing that they have to do, the changes in how things work academically, and especially those later teens as they're getting closer to, graduating, start to experience panic attacks around academics. And there's a lot of great resources out there, for managing those things. If you have questions about that, I'm happy to address that or send you some of those resources. But, on an extreme standpoint from an anxiety, panic attacks can start to become more common or more prevalent. One of the big ones that I see, unfortunately, and I've gone back and forth on whether to and how to address it here, but self-harm and suicide is also something that is very big and prominent within our kids. And then usually it starts in middle school. I've seen it start younger than that, but middle school is kind of that age when a lot of our teens, again, they start talking more and relying more on those friendships than they do those relationships with us as their parents. And it's not uncommon for them to get into and fall into groups where they talk about self-harm, they talk about cutting, they talk about burning. And it's a big deal. I always take it very seriously. Although most of our kids or teens that do engage in self-harm behaviors typically don't intend on trying to take their lives, but nonetheless, it is still a very harmful, deeply painful coping skill that does need to be addressed. If your child, middle schooler, high schooler, if you do find or have found that they've engaged in those, or even if their friends are, because typically that's usually where they're getting the ideas from, that and social media, have conversations with them, take them in to see, a therapist. If you don't know where to go, I'm sure Erin would be happy to direct you or give you my contact information. I can't take on everybody, but I'm happy to connect you with other resources and fantastic clinicians in the community that can. But self-harm is a big deal. I always encourage parents, and this might be uncomfortable. It's not uncomfortable for me because it's what I do every day, but you should be having those hard conversations with your kid or kids. You should be asking them about the things that they talk about within their peer group. Are your peers talking about self-harm? Is that something you guys talk about? Do you know of anyone who's done it? Do you know of anyone who's attempted suicide? Don't be afraid to ask those uncomfortable questions to your kids. You might be surprised by the answers. It also really communicates to them that you're open and available for having hard conversations with them, and that is a gift to your child. So don't be afraid to have those conversations with them. If I could offer just a few more tips here, I hear a lot of parents that come into my office and they think or believe that sometimes their child's symptoms, the things that they're going through, maybe aren't that important. It's just middle school stuff. It's just teenage high school stuff. And I get it. Our teens, they can be a bit dramatic sometimes. I understand it, but to your child, this is their world. This is real. What they are going through, it's all that they know. And so if I could encourage you to not take on a dismissive role to your child's feelings, if they come to you and say, well, this girl at school was telling everybody that I was this and that and this, and I'm not, and all of that peer drama. I can't even let my brain go there because it's sometimes so ridiculous. But to your kid, like, that's real. And if you take on a dismissive role of just, telling them like, well, just get over it, just don't talk to them, or it'll be different next year. When you're in high school, just don't pay any mind to them. Take those conversations and those moments when they open up to you very seriously. They don't have to come to you and talk to you. Your kids don't have to come and share about what's going on in their world. And if they do, it is a gift. It's an opportunity for you to connect with them. And believe it or not, they actually want you to as well. I hear so many kids that say, well, I wish I could talk to my parents about this, but they don't really care about what's going on, or they won't listen. And parents are usually like, that's not true. That's not the case, right? But how do our kids know, right, that that's true unless we are showing them by our actions that we care? And I'm going to wrap up here quickly because I see that I'm coming close to time, but if you find that maybe your child is experiencing some anxiety that maybe is out of proportion to what you think a normal maybe teen would be going through, or if you have concerns about some depression, please reach out to your general practitioner. Please reach out to a therapist and make contact with them. It doesn't hurt to just go in and talk, even if it's quote unquote nothing. I've never had a kid come into my office and there not be something that's there to talk about. Maybe it's not anxiety. Maybe it's more about peer-related stuff. Maybe it's about family dynamic stuff. But if you notice something that's different, go with your gut, go with your hunch, and get them in and talk with somebody. If you feel more comfortable going through your GP, go that way. They usually have a list of clinicians in town that can be referred to. Again, you can always reach out to Aaron. You can reach out to myself. I'm going to volunteer Darren, even though he's not here, Michelle, so apologize. But I know Darren is also fantastic at connecting other families with folks too. I would encourage you, if your child is experiencing depression and or anxiety, to not just jump to medication first. That's my own personal professional belief. I am an advocate for trying everything else first before just jumping to medication. There's a lot of things from a diet standpoint, from nutrition, from a behavioral standpoint, sleep standpoint, exercise, you name it, even just traditional talk therapy, that can be really advantageous for your child. And while medications have a really great purpose, and I value them and there is a place for them, when it comes to our teens and when it comes to our kids, I just don't think that they are the thing that we should jump to first. So I won't get off on my soapbox, at least about that any longer, because I could talk more about that. Let me maybe pause and see if there's any questions that you guys may have, something that maybe I didn't tune into or ask. Yes. Yeah, that would have been helpful, right, for me to give some suggestions. Yeah. So if your, I'll just say daughter, right, has come to you and your go-to is to just ignore them. Well, don't pay any attention to them. I would offer that maybe you say something to the effect of, wow, that must be really difficult. I'm sure that was really frustrating. I'm sure that's pretty annoying. Something more validating of at least her emotional experience. What's your daughter's name? Caroline. Sorry, it's easier for me to give examples if I can use names. So, wow, Caroline, wow, sweetie, that sounds like that's pretty frustrating for you. And I know you really care about this friend, or you care about what these people think. And I'm sure that's really difficult to have them say things that aren't true about you. Are you nervous about going to school tomorrow? Does that make you feel a little worried about what others might say? You can kind of continue it, right, in that way. It takes a little bit of us as parents coming off of autopilot and being really engaging, and that can be hard when we're also like doing 50 million other things or stressed about other stuff. But yeah, that's really, really tough. Yeah, well, I mean, you can say it maybe to the effect of, I get it, you don't want to go back to school. I probably wouldn't want to go back either if I knew that that was what was going to be happening, or if I expected that. That has to be hard. Unfortunately, you got to go to school though. And I'd love to maybe shift our talk to how we can help you get through school, given that it's not an option for you to stay home. I know that's not easy. It's easy for me to say and give you this really eloquent example, but I know in live action, our teens, our kids, they always have something to come back with. So easier said than done, I know. Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? No? I don't want to tell you anything. That's also hard. Have you trapped them in the car on a long ride before? Okay, that's yeah, that is really hard. Sometimes you can reflect back what you see. And what I mean by that is, hey, I ask you a lot of questions, and that probably feels a bit intrusive or kind of annoying at times, right? I hope you know that I'm asking because I love you, I care about you, I want to know what's going on in your world, right? You may not want to share with me because I'm mom, I'm not cool, right? I may not know, or I might get mad, right? Or I may not let you do something, but I hope maybe in time you can start to open up a little bit more. You can also go the route of, hey, looks like you don't really want to talk. Am I getting that message loud and clear? And if they roll their eyes and kind of give you the head nod and go, yeah, right? Then say, well, I get that. You probably don't want to talk, right? I just want you to know that I love you. I'm here for you. You can't make them talk. And there's a lot of pain, I know, in that for parents that want that closeness and want that relationship. But I tell parents just to keep trying and keep at it, keep going in there, keep trying, even if you get rejected a million times, because eventually they're going to be 25, 30, 35, and they're going to come back and go, I'm really sorry for the way I acted when I was a teenager. Hopefully, maybe, right? Yeah, that's a great question, and I will try to be brief because that is a big topic. I get asked that a lot. Should my kids have social media? Should they not? My stance is that by 8th grade, yes, they should have at least one social media account. And if your kids are wanting one, right? Before really 8th grade, I'm not encouraging of it because there's far more harm that comes from it than any good. With that being said, if your child already has one, then you should be monitoring it. And that should be the understanding if your child is in 6th and 7th grade, and even in 8th grade, you really should be monitoring those accounts. Please keep in mind that the more you say no, the more it is going to push your child in that direction, and they will find other ways to sneak accounts on their friends' phones, what have you. But from a mental health standpoint, we have to teach our kids how to use social media in a healthy way. And that is important, not just for their safety, but also for their mental health. Knowing how to engage with others on social media, knowing what accounts to follow, what accounts not to follow, accounts that are good for their mental health. I'm so thankful, and I can't believe I'm saying I'm proud of a social media company, but several years ago, Instagram did a fantastic job of really flagging and eliminating the hashtag self-harm. Prior to that, it was horrendous, and I won't go into details about it, but it was horrendous, the things that they would allow to be shown around self-harm. And our teens were the ones that really suffered and struggled. And that's also why parents should be monitoring their kids' account. You also, though, can't monitor everything. You can't be there to see and to do everything, which is why you should be taking the approach of teaching your kids how to use it. If you can empower them and teach them how to use it in a healthy way, instead of just putting the hammer down and saying, no, you can't have it, no, you can't use it, they're not going to be better off for it. When it comes to our girls tend to struggle a lot more with accounts on Instagram and TikTok and all these other ones. The list goes on. Snapchat can be really harmful from a mental health standpoint with our girls. And so it's important to be asking, what are you looking at? What are you thinking when you see a picture that has been filtered 5 million times and cropped? When you see that picture of what you think is perfect, right? What do you think about yourself? What do you feel? I think it's important for us to be asking our kids those questions and trying to, at least, right? Even if they're not wanting to engage like back with us, but it's important to do that so that they know, one, that we care, and it just gives the opportunity to hear what they say and for you to have influence as a parent in those moments. Well, I really appreciate you guys having me out tonight. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. If you have any questions, Aaron can blast out my contact information. Even if I can't help your child or your family, I love being in the position of being able to connect others with resources in the community, as I know Aaron does as well.
One thing, this is super hot. I'm going to borrow your microphone. One thing that, this is hot too. One thing that we talk about this summer at Hometown Mission Week was each of us needs all of us. And sometimes parenting, I don't have teenagers yet. I get to live vicariously through all of you, and I get to watch how you parent your teenagers and take notes, so that when I have teenagers, I'll be more prepared, which is probably a lie. But one thing that we talked about this summer was that each of us needs all of us. Each of us needs all of us. And the cool thing that happens when we have conversations like these is that I think one of the cool things is that we find out that we're not alone. That the issues that we encounter as parents and the things that we go through as families, they are not isolated. That we do these things together. And so the more we can have conversations about that and learn from people who do this professionally and are not a lot more knowledgeable than we are, I think the better we feel as parents and the more that we learn. And hopefully tonight we were able to put something in our tool belt so that when things happen with our teenagers, we're better prepared. Thank you for being here tonight. Ashley is going to be out front here for just a little bit. And then we will see you next Sunday, your student next Sunday night. Thanks a lot.